They called my service dog fake and kicked her during a memorial for fallen firefighters. They ripped my Medal of Valor from my jacket and made me prove my scars in front of everyone. I said nothing then. I was 6 months ago. Yesterday, I faced them again at the same memorial and watched as they were the ones thrown out, while my dog, Cassie, sat calmly by my side, proving who the real heroes were. They've been cracking down on faked heroes at every firefighter memorial for months, and with my medication tremors and civilian clothes, I must have looked like any other poser trying to steal valor, at least in their eyes. I looked so pitiful, other firefighters avoided me entirely, until someone whispered my story. Then the salutes came, tears in their eyes. So when 2 members of the fire department honor guard approached me at the memorial, I knew exactly what was coming. The taller one pointed at Cassie, while the other pulled out his phone. He bent to my eye level, his face twisted in disgust, eyes glued to my Medal of Valor pin. His breath reeked of coffee and arrogance. Medal of Valor and a fake service dog? Real heroes don't show up to ceremonies pretending they need emotional support, he said, loud enough for everyone in the memorial garden to hear. His partner nodded, circling Cassie like a predator, filming with a shake of his head. I reached for my retired firefighter ID, but the tall guard slapped my hand away and spun me so fast Cassie's leash tangled around my legs. I had to cling to the memorial wall to keep from collapsing. Then he dumped my bag out onto the marble, kicking through my belongings like garbage, scattering my medications across the names etched in stone. "Stand up straight," he barked. "Prove you're actually disabled." I explained the PTSD. He sneered. "Show me your scars." When I pulled down my collar, he poked the melted skin like it was fake, like it was some kind of prop. Then he stomped on my anxiety meds, 1 bottle at a time, grinding them into powder beneath his heel. "Look at this, everyone. Another junkie playing dress-up," he said. He yanked open my jacket and ripped my medals off, 1 by 1, grinding them into the stone. He found my father's old challenge coin and tried to snap it in half. Then he found the folded newspaper clipping, 20 years old, and laughed. "Hero saves children? You definitely printed this off Wikipedia." He shredded it into confetti. A photo fell from my pocket. My crew from Station 19, the 5 who went into the fire with me. Only I came out. He held it up, tore it in half, and let the pieces scatter on the wind. "Nice Photoshop job. Almost looked real." I said nothing. I couldn't. My throat was full of smoke that wasn't there. 20 years dissolved. I was back in that fire, back to the radio static, the screaming, watching my brothers disappear all over again. Other attendees began chiming in. A woman in high heels and a designer jacket shook her head at my trembling hands. "Real firefighters don't have panic attacks. Those burns? Probably a meth lab accident." Someone pointed at Cassie. "Bet that vest came from Amazon." The guard noticed my wedding ring. He grabbed my hand and examined the worn gold band. "Your wife left because she couldn't stand a look at what you became. Your kids probably tell people their dad died in that fire, better than admitting he came out broken." My chest caved in. My daughters hadn't visited since the divorce, and for 1 crushing second, I believed him. Then his partner yanked Cassie's leash, dragging her away. She whimpered, nails scraping on concrete, trying to stay near me. The tall one hauled me up by my collar and slammed me to the ground. My head struck marble. My jacket tore. I lay there gasping like I was back in that kindergarten classroom again. The world tilted, smoke in my eyes. And I could hear them, those 23 kids, screaming behind a wall of fire. The crowd didn't move. Some filmed, some turned away, others just watched, disgusted. Then the guard kicked Cassie in the ribs. She yelped and stumbled sideways. That sound was my undoing. She was the only reason I kept surviving, year after year. So I crawled, hands bloodied by the names etched in the memorial stone. Through broken pills, through torn photographs, all I could think was, get to Cassie. Then a voice exploded behind us. "That's the hero from Station U, you ignorant bastards!" Chief Ramirez stormed through, eyes ablaze. His voice dropped like thunder. He saved 47 children from that school fire 5 years ago, including my daughter." He jabbed his finger at them like it was a weapon. The taller guard's hand trembled as he pulled out his phone and searched my name. When he saw the headlines, all the blood drained from his face. The phone slipped from his fingers and cracked against the marble floor. They were fired within the hour. Cassie, bruised but unbroken, limped back into my arms. Her tail wagged, just once, weakly. And once the dust settled, I promised myself they'd pay. Insulting me or questioning my service was one thing, but hurting her, that crossed the line. The next 3 weeks blurred together in a haze of recovery and planning. My head still ached from where it struck the memorial wall. Cassie moved slower, always favoring her left side where the boot had landed. The vet said nothing was broken, but watching her limp made my hands tremble worse than any withdrawal ever had. Chief Ramirez called twice to check in. He made sure those 2 guards lost their jobs and were flagged for disciplinary action within the department. But it wasn't enough. Not for what they did to her. So I started digging. It's amazing what you can find online when you've got time and a quiet, festering kind of rage. The tall guard's name was Nathan Delaney. 34 years old, married, 2 kids, part-time personal trainer when he wasn't strutting around in his honor guard uniform. His social media was filled with shirtless gym selfies and empty motivational quotes about strength and warrior discipline. His partner was easier to find. Kyle Brenner, 26, lived with his parents out in the suburbs, posted endlessly about his service with the honor guard like he thought it made him a Navy SEAL. Photo after photo of ceremonies, always with that same smirk, the one I'd seen when he circled Cassie like a predator. I printed everything. Their schedules, their habits, their favorite haunts. Nathan hit the same gym every morning at 5 a.m. sharp. Kyle spent Thursday nights at a bar downtown, Sid's, telling war stories to anyone who'd buy him a beer. My hand shook as I laid it all out. Not from meds, not from fear. From memory. From rage. From the way Nathan crushed my pills into dust, from the way Kyle yanked Cassie's leash and the sound she made when that boot landed. That night, I couldn't sleep. Smoke returned, like always. 20 years, and I still woke up choking on air that wasn't smoke. Still heard the screams of children behind walls of flame. Cassie usually helped, curling against me, grounding me. But now she moved delicately, guarding her injured side. The next morning, I drove past Nathan's gym and watched him strut inside with his protein shake and expensive workout gear. Confident, clean. No burns beneath his collar, no tremor in his hands, no service dog at his side. I shadowed him for a week, learned his movements. Gym, protein shake from the bar next door, home. Shower, work. Same every day. Early morning, always alone. Kyle was a pattern too. Thursdays at Sid's, buying drinks and telling war stories to anyone who'd buy him a beer. I sat in the corner once, cap pulled low, watching him reenact what he'd done at the memorial. He even mimed kicking something. The table burst into laughter. My chest seized, smoke returned. I grabbed the table, knuckles white, and counted like my therapist taught me. 1, 2, 3, 4. Cassie nudged my leg from under the table, and the haze slowly lifted. Then, I started small. I found out where Nathan bought his protein powder. The shop had a loyalty program. One casual chat with a teenage cashier, and suddenly the store had a random quality check policy. Nathan's favorite brand started vanishing from the shelves just before he arrived. He began showing up to work agitated, barking at coworkers. I watched from across the street as he argued with his supervisor about being late again. Kyle's car, meanwhile, developed problems. Nothing amateur, no sugar in the tank, just a few unfortunate electrical issues, a couple of loose cables, the kind of thing that stalls you out at stoplights or drains your battery unexpectedly. He missed 3 shifts in 2 weeks.
Word through the memorial regulars was that Kyle was close to getting kicked off the honor guard. But it still wasn't enough. Not for Cassie. So I dug deeper.
Nathan had debts, big ones. His social media flaunted a lifestyle that his honor guard stipend and trainer salary couldn't possibly support. Designer labels, flashy watches, private school tuition for his kids. Credit card statements? Not hard to intercept when someone tosses their mail into the recycling bin without shredding it first. Kyle had skeletons too. A look at his public library browser history told me plenty. Dating profiles where he claimed to be a full-time firefighter. Messages to women boasting about his combat experience and the lives he'd saved. Lies built entirely on stolen valor, worse than anything he accused me of. I documented it all. Screenshots, photos, financials. I built files on both of them, thick enough to tear down the plastic castles they'd built around their fake reputations. But I had to be smart. No police, no news stories. This had to stay personal. As I planned, the nightmares worsened. Some nights I woke screaming, back in that inferno of a kindergarten classroom. Children's voices tangled in the roar of flame. Cassie would limp over, gently rest her head on my chest, and we'd just sit there in the silence until dawn. Both of us damaged, both of us alive. I rehearsed what I'd say when the time came. Wrote script, memorized lines, tore 'em up, started over. My therapist would probably call it fixation, say I was using revenge to avoid my trauma. Maybe she'd be right. But every time I saw Cassie limp on that left side, every time she startled when someone moved too fast, the fury returned like clockwork. 3 weeks turned into a month. By then, I knew their routines better than they did. I knew Nathan's wife was starting to suspect something about his spending. I knew Kyle's parents were beginning to wonder why his son had never once been seen near an actual fire. I knew exactly how to unravel the lies they'd been living. The morning I decided to act, Cassie sensed it. She stayed close, her weight a steady warmth against my leg as I reviewed the plan one last time. The files were organized, evidence was ready. All that remained was execution. But first, I had to get past the tremors. Had to force myself through the smoke that clouded my mind every time I imagined confronting them. I had to be stronger than the broken version of me they'd left on the memorial stones. I looked at the new Medal of Valor Chief Ramirez had given me, at the replacements from my father's challenge coin and the photo of my crew, at all the things they tried to crush. Then I looked at Cassie, still faithful, still brave, still trusting me, even after everything they'd done to her. Tomorrow, I decided. Tomorrow, they'd understand what they'd really done. Not through fists or lawsuits, through something far more personal. Through the slow, silent dismantling of everything they'd propped up on arrogance and cruelty. They thought they'd exposed a fraud, thought they'd broken me. But they forgot something fundamental about real firefighters. We don't leave anyone behind. Not our fallen brothers, not the kids we carried from burning classrooms, and especially not the dog who kept us breathing when the smoke tried to swallow us whole. I mean, who hasn't done a little light stalking while plotting their revenge, right? Memorizing a guy's protein shake order and showing up outside his gym at dawn? Pretty standard coping behavior. And Kyle, the part where I sat in the shadows of that bar watching him pantomime kicking a dog like it was a reenactment of his greatest achievement, that was something else. The way he smirked, like he thought hurting Cassie was a joke. Nathan and Kyle were about to learn what happened when you attacked a hero's dog. They were about to learn that some forms of justice don't come from courtrooms or reprimand hearings. Some justice is quieter, colder, precise, and permanent. Phase 1 started with Nathan Delaney's gym ritual. I parked outside at 4:45 a.m., 15 minutes ahead of his usual time, and positioned myself just out of view near the juice bar entrance. My fingers clutched the steering wheel. They shook, but this time it wasn't withdrawal. It was anticipation. Nathan pulled in at 5:02 a.m., right on schedule.
in that black BMW he couldn't afford. I watched as he checked his reflection in the side mirror before heading inside. Same cocky grin, same ego that had stood over me on that cold marble, crushing everything sacred beneath his boots. I waited 10 minutes. Then I walked into the juice bar.
The teenage cashier recognized me from my earlier visits and gave a friendly wave. I'd been showing up every morning for the past 2 weeks, laying the groundwork, learning the rhythms. Nathan always ordered the same thing after his workouts: a large protein shake, extra whey, no banana. While she prepared my usual, I casually mentioned seeing someone leave a wallet out in the gym parking lot. She immediately perked up, concerned, asking for a description. I gave her one, perfectly accurate, right down to Nathan's overpriced sneakers and branded hoodie. She nodded, earnest and eager to help, promising to check with him when he came in. An hour later, I watched from my car as Nathan burst out of the juice bar, patting his pockets in panic. He'd spent 20 minutes inside arguing with the staff about his missing wallet, demanding to see camera footage that didn't exist. The cashier, bless her heart, had stayed helpful the entire time, gently asking if he was sure he'd brought it with him. His wallet sat safely in my glove box. It hadn't been stolen exactly, just borrowed. Taken from his gym bag while he was bench pressing. I returned it later, of course, after he'd canceled his cards, after he'd dealt with the headache of fraud reports and frozen accounts, after he got a taste of what it feels like to have someone go through your personal life without permission. Kyle Brenner required a different approach. His Thursday night ritual at O'Malley's offered plenty of opportunities, but first I needed to understand him better. I spent 3 nights in quiet corners, watching, nursing the same pint of beer for hours as he held court at the bar. He had a type: young women, usually alone, always wide-eyed at his embellished tales. He'd flash his honor guard badge, talk about his service to the city, drop hints about danger, heroism, sacrifice, all of it fabricated, all of it stolen. The real firefighters in the bar gave him a wide berth, but the civilians couldn't tell the difference. That's when I started leaving anonymous reviews on O'Malley's social media pages. Nothing slanderous, just comments, observations. Wondering out loud why a man in partial uniform was drinking so heavily. Mentioning how his loud stories and aggressive body language made people uncomfortable. Noting how his demonstrations of fire rescue techniques disrupted the place's atmosphere. It didn't take long for the manager to notice. I saw him watching Kyle more closely, saw him whispering to the bartenders. Within 2 weeks, Kyle's usual seat at the bar was suddenly taken. His favorite bartender stopped indulging him. His audience? Gone. The admiration he fed on evaporated. But this was just groundwork, minor annoyances. I wasn't done. They needed to feel what I'd felt that day at the memorial, the helplessness, the raw humiliation and the rage of watching someone destroy what matters most while you're powerless to stop them. Cassie's limp had improved a bit. She moved more confidently, but still favored her left side on morning walks. Every ginger step she took reminded me of why I was doing this. She had kept me tethered through 2 decades of nightmares, and they'd kicked her like she was nothing. I expanded my research. Nathan's wife, Carolyn, worked as a dental hygienist. They had 2 kids enrolled in an elite private academy and a mortgage on a house that screamed overextension. His social media showed luxury vacations, designer wardrobes, new electronics, most of it financed by maxed-out credit cards and ballooning personal loans. The pressure point was his side hustle, personal training clients who paid cash, unreported income, tax fraud. I recorded everything: names, schedules, transactions. The IRS might have been interested, but that felt too distant, too impersonal. This wasn't about agencies. This was between us. Kyle's weak point was easier to exploit. He lived for validation, for the image he had constructed around himself. Take that away, and there was nothing left. No achievements, no service record, just a 26-year-old man living at home pretending to be something he was never brave enough to become. I created anonymous accounts and began posting cropped images from that day at the memorial. Nothing too obvious, just pieces. One photo showed Kyle circling an injured service dog. Another, Nathan crushing prescription bottles under his heel. No accusations, no context. Just the truth, quietly served. Each post tagged the fire department's official account. Traction was slow at first, then familiar names from the memorial began chiming in. A veteran mentioned seeing someone on the ground. Someone else remembered the dog. The fire department's media team took notice. They began investigating. Nathan noticed first. I was parked across from the gym when he burst out, phone pressed hard to his ear, gesturing wildly as he paced the sidewalk.
His workout had been cut short. Something had rattled him enough to shatter his sacred routine. I trailed him at a distance as he drove to Kyle's house and watched from across the street as they argued in the driveway. Nathan kept shoving his phone at Kyle, jabbing at the screen. Kyle shook his head, threw up his hands, and stormed back inside. Their alliance was already splintering. My hands didn't shake the way they used to. Weeks of planning had steadied me. Having a purpose, something beyond just surviving from one haunted night to the next, gave me something I hadn't felt in years: control. The smoke still came at night, but now when it cleared, I had a reason to keep going. I decided it was time to escalate. Caroline, Nathan's wife, had a right to know where their money was actually going, not through anonymous notes or melodrama, but through carefully placed seeds of doubt. I started visiting the coffee shop near her dental office, just another regular in the morning rush. Small talk, nothing invasive. I mentioned seeing her husband at the gym, how dedicated he seemed to be to training. Remarked on how nice his gear was for a city employee. Commented on how lucky his clients must be to have such a committed trainer. Her expression changed each time, just a little. A tightening around her mouth when I brought up the expensive equipment. A pause before she answered questions about his hours. The wheels were turning. Questions were forming about schedules and money that didn't quite align. Kyle needed a gentler strategy. His parents were kind people, hard-working, proud of their son's honor guard status. They didn't deserve direct harm, but they did deserve the truth. I started attending their church, sat a few pews back, blended in. After services, I'd join small conversations about memorials and the importance of honoring real heroes. I'd talk about how upsetting it was when people disrespected veterans or mistreated service animals. It spread naturally, as gossip always does. One Sunday, I overheard Kyle's mother questioning him, asking him why he was always at bars instead of responding to real emergencies, asking him why he never talked about actual fire scenes. The doubt was growing. Quiet, steady. Caroline cracked first. I was parked down the block when he came flying out of his house one evening, the front door slamming so hard it made the windows shudder. Caroline stood in the doorway, a stack of what looked like credit card statements in hand. Their voices carried across the street. She was demanding answers about his unreported training income. He was scrambling, defensive, panicked. He didn't go back inside. He spent the night in his car, parked outside the gym. I watched him try to freshen up in the locker room the next morning, catching glimpses of the exhaustion in his eyes. His pristine routine was in pieces, his image crumbling. Kyle unraveled differently. The cropped photos from the memorial had reached former honor guard members. They recognized what they were seeing. They began sharing stories, quiet at first, then more vocal, about Kyle's behavior, his exaggerations, his disrespect toward veterans and actual first responders. The fire department launched a formal review. I was at the next memorial ceremony, staying in the background, watching. Kyle stood at his post, isolated. Other guards gave him space. People whispered as he walked by. You could see the strain in his rigid posture. You could feel the silence pressing down on him. But I'd made a miscalculation. In my pursuit of justice, I had underestimated their desperation. People who feel cornered do unpredictable things, and I had backed both of them into a corner so tight they could barely breathe. The attack came on a Tuesday morning. Cassie and I were in the park, walking our usual loop near the apartment. Her limp had improved. She moved easier. I'd let my guard down, finally focused more on her healing than on the shadows around us. That's when Nathan appeared, stepping out from behind a maintenance shed. He moved fast. Before I could react, he had Cassie's leash in his hands, yanked it hard, tearing it from my grip. She yelped, a sound that ignited every protective instinct I had. Then Kyle stepped out from the other side, blocking my path. They had planned this, coordinated it. I had pushed them too far, too fast, and now they were pushing back. Nathan gripped the leash tight, keeping Cassie just out of reach as she struggled and whimpered, trying to get to me. Kyle stood between us, fists clenched. That same cruel rage I saw in his eyes at the memorial was back. Only this time, it was aimed directly at me.
His workout had been cut short. Something had rattled him enough to shatter his sacred routine. I trailed him at a distance as he drove to Kyle's house and watched from across the street as they argued in the driveway. Nathan kept shoving his phone at Kyle, jabbing at the screen. Kyle shook his head, threw up his hands, and stormed back inside. Their alliance was already splintering. My hands didn't shake the way they used to. Weeks of planning had steadied me. Having a purpose, something beyond just surviving from one haunted night to the next, gave me something I hadn't felt in years: control. The smoke still came at night, but now when it cleared, I had a reason to keep going. I decided it was time to escalate. Caroline, Nathan's wife, had a right to know where their money was actually going. Not through anonymous notes or melodrama, but through carefully placed seeds of doubt. I started visiting the coffee shop near her dental office. Just another regular in the morning rush. Small talk, nothing invasive. I mentioned seeing her husband at the gym, how dedicated he seemed to be to training. Remarked on how nice his gear was for a city employee. Commented on how lucky his clients must be to have such a committed trainer. Her expression changed each time, just a little. A tightening around her mouth when I brought up the expensive equipment. A pause before she answered questions about his hours. The wheels were turning. Questions were forming about schedules and money that didn't quite align. Kyle needed a gentler strategy. His parents were kind people, hard-working, proud of their son's honor guard status. They didn't deserve direct harm, but they did deserve the truth. I started attending their church, sat a few pews back, blended in. After services, I'd join small conversations about memorials and the importance of honoring real heroes. I'd talk about how upsetting it was when people disrespected veterans or mistreated service animals. It spread naturally, as gossip always does. One Sunday, I overheard Kyle's mother questioning him, asking him why he was always at bars instead of responding to real emergencies, asking him why he never talked about actual fire scenes. The doubt was growing. Quiet, steady. Caroline cracked first. I was parked down the block when he came flying out of his house one evening, the front door slamming so hard it made the windows shudder. Caroline stood in the doorway, a stack of what looked like credit card statements in hand. Their voices carried across the street. She was demanding answers about his unreported training income. He was scrambling, defensive, panicked. He didn't go back inside. He spent the night in his car, parked outside the gym. I watched him try to freshen up in the locker room the next morning, catching glimpses of the exhaustion in his eyes. His pristine routine was in pieces, his image crumbling. Kyle unraveled differently. The cropped photos from the memorial had reached former honor guard members. They recognized what they were seeing. They began sharing stories, quiet at first, then more vocal, about Kyle's behavior, his exaggerations, his disrespect toward veterans and actual first responders. The fire department launched a formal review. I was at the next memorial ceremony, staying in the background, watching. Kyle stood at his post, isolated. Other guards gave him space. People whispered as he walked by. You could see the strain in his rigid posture. You could feel the silence pressing down on him. But I'd made a miscalculation. In my pursuit of justice, I had underestimated their desperation. People who feel cornered do unpredictable things, and I had backed both of them into a corner so tight they could barely breathe. The attack came on a Tuesday morning. Cassie and I were in the park, walking our usual loop near the apartment. Her limp had improved. She moved easier. I'd let my guard down, finally focused more on her healing than on the shadows around us. That's when Nathan appeared, stepping out from behind a maintenance shed. He moved fast. Before I could react, he had Cassie's leash in his hands, yanked it hard, tearing it from my grip. She yelped, a sound that ignited every protective instinct I had. Then Kyle stepped out from the other side, blocking my path. They had planned this, coordinated it. I had pushed them too far, too fast, and now they were pushing back. Nathan gripped the leash tight, keeping Cassie just out of reach as she struggled and whimpered, trying to get to me. Kyle stood between us, fists clenched. That same cruel rage I saw in his eyes at the memorial was back. Only this time, it was aimed directly at me. The confrontation was short, but brutal. Kyle shoved me hard. My balance didn't hold. The tremors from my medication made it impossible to stay upright, and I hit the gravel hard. Pain shot through my ribs, still healing, and I gasped. Nathan laughed, that same cruel, cutting laugh from the memorial. He tied Cassie's leash to a bench, just out of reach. She strained and whined, eyes locked on me, while he joined Kyle in standing over me. 2 against 1, just like last time. Only this time, there was no Chief Ramirez to intervene. They made their threats clear. Stop whatever I was doing. Delete the posts. Stay away from their families. Don't show up near their work or homes. Or next time, Cassie wouldn't be so lucky. The threat was direct, plain-spoken, and ugly. But I stayed down, played the part they expected. The trembling veteran, cowed and powerless. Let them think they'd won. Let them walk away drunk on the illusion of control. But inside, something had shifted. They'd threatened Cassie. Again. They'd made the same unforgivable mistake twice. Once they were gone, I untied her and held her close, checking her over. She was shaken but unhurt. She leaned into me, seeking comfort, and giving it. We stayed there on the gravel for a long time. Her warmth was my anchor as I processed what had just happened. They thought they could scare me back into silence. They thought the man lying on the memorial stone 6 months ago was still the same. But they forgot. I ran into burning buildings. I carried kids through walls of fire. I didn't back down because of fear. I worked through it. They had changed the rules, escalated to violence. And in doing so, they revealed everything. Their desperation, their alliance, their weakness. They were scared. So scared they risked another assault to try and stop me. Fine. The strategy would change. No more indirect pressure. No more slow unraveling. Oh man, 2 grown men jumping someone and his dog in a park, like it's a middle school showdown behind the bleachers. Honestly, it was almost pathetic. Nathan and Kyle had gone from cocky, uniformed bullies to some kind of knockoff villain duo, hiding behind sheds and coordinating their ambush like amateurs. And their big threat, stop posting or we hurt your dog again? Real genius-level stuff. They'd made it personal again. And personal required precision. They had shown me they were willing to harm Cassie just to save face. That changed everything. I spent the next week not plotting revenge, but preparing for resolution. They needed to feel the consequences of what they'd done. They needed to understand it, and I'd use their fear against them. Nathan's life was already imploding. Caroline had kicked him out. He was burning through savings and cheap motels. His personal training business was collapsing, clients disappearing as the whispers about his debt spread. The image he had built, the flawless mask, gone. Kyle wasn't doing any better. The fire department's review was turning against him. Witnesses had come forward. His once prized social media accounts were now digital crime scenes. Even his parents had started keeping their distance at church. Disappointment all over their faces. Then I started sending messages. No threats, just reminders. Photos of Nathan passed out in his car. Screenshots of Kyle's dating profiles with their false claims. Clips and images delivered at just the right moment to just the right inboxes. Proof that I was watching. Proof that I remembered. The pressure worked. Nathan started making mistakes at the gym, dropping weights, lashing out at staff. Kyle drank more, talked louder, sloppier, more unhinged at O'Malley's. The desperation leaked from every pore. They knew it was me, and they knew they were unraveling. The final phase needed to be precise. I needed them both in the same place at the same time. So I sent them identical messages. Meet me at the memorial, where it started, or everything goes public. Your deaths, your lies, the park attack, all of it. They showed, of course. Fear made them predictable. I waited by the wall, the one where they'd tried to tear me apart. Cassie sat by my side, steady, strong, no limp now. We'd both healed, both found our footing. Nathan arrived first. His BMW wheezed into the parking lot, nearly out of gas, like its owner, running on fumes and denial.
His designer clothes were rumpled, the sharp lines gone, the once pristine image dulled by stress and failure. Kyle arrived a few minutes later, riding in his parents' car, since his own was still unreliable. They stood together, but the distance between them was unmistakable. Their fragile alliance had frayed to the edge of collapse. I stated my terms plainly. Resign from the fire department, both of you. Leave the honor guard. Find other jobs. Never wear the uniform again. In exchange, I'd erase everything. Every file, every photo, every carefully compiled record of their lies and threats. I'd let them rebuild, start over, but not as false heroes. The alternative? Full exposure. Their secrets blasted wide open. Their families would know everything. Their employers would receive complete documentation. Their entire identities, meticulously constructed on arrogance and deception, would disintegrate. Nathan broke first. The debt, the ruined marriage, the shattered image, it all crushed him. He agreed through gritted teeth, hands trembling with fury, but he knew I had him pinned. There was no out left. Kyle clung to the delusion longer, still desperate to believe in the fantasy of his own heroism. But when Nathan turned on him, laid bare Kyle's lies to protect himself, it was over. The younger man collapsed under the weight of betrayal and truth. They turned on each other like dogs, snapping and snarling, blaming one another for the mess they were in. I watched in silence as they imploded. Not because I enjoyed it, because justice sometimes looks like consequences finally catching up. They had assaulted a disabled veteran, kicked a service dog, made threats, tried again. Now they faced accountability. Their resignation letters were filed within a week. Nathan took a job as a regular personal trainer. No title, no ceremony, no uniform to hide behind. Kyle moved back in with his parents permanently. The job applications he sent out were to strip malls and grocery stores. His dreams of valor extinguished. Their days playing the role of heroes were over. But my victory felt quiet. The rage that had fueled me for so long began to slip away, and in its place came something more familiar, heavier. The nightmares returned, the smoke, the cries, the lost faces. Cassie knew, she always did. During the worst nights, she curled closer, her steady breath against my chest, the reminder that we had made it through. We were still standing. We'd survived them, but the real war was internal, always had been. One afternoon, Chief Ramirez called. His voice was neutral, but not cold. He knew about the resignations, knew how it had all gone down. He didn't endorse my methods, but he understood them. Sometimes, he said, justice doesn't come from the top down. Sometimes it rises from where it hurts most. He invited me to the next memorial ceremony. Said I'd be honored properly this time. No harassment, no suspicion, just gratitude for what I'd sacrificed and recognition for what I'd saved. It was an olive branch, a doorway back to the world I'd lost. I thought about it for days. The fear of crowds still sat deep in my bones, the judgment, the possibility of vulnerability. The tremors hadn't disappeared. The meds were still part of my routine. The PTSD hadn't been vanquished just because Nathan and Kyle had been. But Cassie deserved more than hiding. She'd stood with me through every battle, faced danger because of my choices. Maybe it was time to stop living like the war was still happening. Maybe the real victory was showing up. So the morning of the ceremony, I pulled out my dress blues for the first time in years. The medals Chief Ramirez had replaced gleamed against the dark cloth. My father's challenge coin rested in my pocket, solid and grounding. Cassie wore her vest proudly, no limp, no hesitation. We drove as the sun crept over the horizon, gold light casting long shadows and quiet promise across the road. My hands trembled on the wheel, not from meds, from something else. Anticipation. Hope. A sense that maybe, just maybe, I was about to reclaim something I thought I'd lost for good. The parking lot was already half full. Firefighters, families, familiar faces. Some people recognized me. A few nodded with quiet respect. Others didn't know my story but saw a veteran and his service dog showing up to honor the fallen. No one questioned my place there. I stepped out, Cassie steady at my side. That's when I saw them. Nathan Delaney, standing by the memorial gates. No uniform now, just a suit that didn't fit quite right, trying too hard to look like something he wasn't anymore. His eyes found mine, sharp and bitter. And Kyle Brenner fidgeting near the flagpoles, his hand dipped into his pocket, restless, twitchy. They weren't supposed to be here. Their resignations had been crystal clear. No more department events, no more memorials.
But desperation makes people reckless, and these two had nothing left to lose. I kept walking, locking eyes with Nathan as Cassie tensed beside me, her body alert, reading the shift in atmosphere. Around us, conversations trailed off. The tension spread like static through the growing crowd of firefighters. Nathan moved first, stepping directly into my path with cold precision. His hand shot out, not to strike, but to snatch the Medal of Valor pinned to my chest, the one Chief Ramirez had replaced. His fingers closed around the medal, trying to rip it free. I caught his wrist. Despite the tremors, my grip held firm. For a few suspended seconds we stood there, locked in an absurd tug-of-war over a single piece of hardware, one that somehow meant both everything and nothing. The crowd began closing in. Confusion radiated in their expressions, questions flickering behind their eyes. Then Kyle appeared beside me, phone in hand, camera already recording. He hadn't changed, still trying to craft a narrative, still believing he could edit his way out of the truth. His voice rose, loud enough to echo through the memorial garden, narrating his twisted version of events, painting me as the aggressor. But this time, things were different. People had heard about what happened, the park attack, the resignations, the lies. The firefighters watching weren't buying it. Whispers spread quickly and the circle around us tightened. Eyes narrowed, not at me, but at them. Nathan let go of the medal suddenly, causing me to stumble back a step. A calculated move, meant to look like I'd pushed him. Kyle's camera caught the moment from just the right angle. Manufactured evidence. A snapshot that could be twisted. They were still trying to destroy me, still clinging to the roles they'd created. I straightened my uniform, breath ragged as the edges of the world blurred. Smoke crept into my vision. My chest tightened. 20 years of trauma doesn't vanish just because you've won a few battles. The screams of children echoed from some distant memory, tangled with the present. Cassie pressed against my leg, her steady weight pulling me back into the now. We weren't here for vengeance anymore. We were here to belong, to stand among the fallen and be seen without shame. That's when Chief Ramirez stepped out from the administrative building. His expression was dark, unreadable, but decisive. He'd warned them to stay away. The terms of their resignation had been explicit, and now they were here, violating that, disrupting a sacred ceremony. Nathan caught sight of the chief, and I saw it. Panic, his plan unraveling in real time. He turned toward the crowd and launched into performance mode. Complaints about mistreatment, accusations of corruption, pleas for understanding. But no one was buying it. These were firefighters, people who had cradled dying strangers in burning rooms, people who had smelled enough lies to recognize one instantly. Silence answered him. Kyle tried another tactic. He pulled out printed screenshots, the social media posts I'd made, my files, my documentation. He waved them like a madman, presenting damning evidence, framing it all as harassment, obsession, the work of a disturbed veteran. His voice rose with each sentence, more frantic, more desperate. But then he made a fatal mistake.
In trying to prove I was the villain, he presented hard proof of his own stolen valor. Screenshots from dating profiles claiming he was a full-time firefighter. Messages boasting about combat experience that never happened. All of it printed out and waved around by his own hand. One veteran firefighter stooped, picked up a page Kyle had dropped. His eyes scanned the text. His jaw set. He passed it to the next person, then another. The murmurs this time weren't confusion. They were disgust. Nathan grabbed Kyle's arm, hissing something through clenched teeth. They needed to go. Now. But Kyle wasn't ready to let go. He had built his entire identity on a lie, and he couldn't give it up. He turned toward me, face twisted, mouth opening to unleash whatever final accusation he had prepared. But before he could speak, Cassie moved. She didn't bark, she didn't growl or bare her teeth. She simply stepped forward and sat squarely between Kyle and me, her back to him, her eyes locked on mine. Unshaken, steady. She chose to ignore him. She chose me. The message was unmistakable. He wasn't worth her attention. The crowd saw it. This dog, trained, loyal, and once brutally mistreated by these very same men, showed more dignity, more restraint, more honor than they ever had.
Someone began clapping, slow, deliberate. Then another joined in. Within moments, dozens of firefighters were applauding. Not for the confrontation, not for the chaos, but for Cassie. For her quiet defiance, for her grace, for the unwavering dignity that put both men to shame. Nathan and Kyle stood frozen, alone now in the heart of a memorial they had once tried to corrupt. Surrounded by the very brotherhood they had pretended to belong to, now facing only silence and contempt. No one spoke to them. No one offered acknowledgement, just a cold wall of disapproval. They had wanted to be heroes so badly they tried to destroy one. Now they were experiencing the one punishment they feared most: irrelevance. Chief Ramirez approached with 2 security officers at his side. The conversation was short and final. They were trespassing, violating their resignation agreements, disrupting a sacred department event. They had 2 options: leave voluntarily or be escorted out. I couldn't help but admire Cassie again. How she had simply walked up and sat down between me and Kyle, spine straight, gaze fixed on me like, "You're not even worth a tail wag, sir." That slow clap must have landed on them like a movie-ending humiliation scene, where the villains realize the whole crowd knows. It wasn't righteous anger that condemned them. It was the shared clarity of a community that saw the truth. Nathan left first, shoulders sagging in defeat. His designer suit couldn't mask what he'd become, a man who'd burned his life chasing an illusion. Kyle followed, still gripping his phone, still capturing nothing that would vindicate him. They walked to their cars alone, watched by the entire firefighter community they once tried so hard to impress. I stood there, trembling. Not from meds this time, from adrenaline, from restraint, from the tidal wave of memories crashing in and out of me. They tried to provoke me, to make me become what they said I was, but I hadn't cracked. I hadn't lashed out. I'd stood my ground. The ceremony continued. I stayed near the back, where shadows outnumbered spotlights. Veterans passed by with nods, subtle acknowledgments of shared burdens. No speeches, no grand displays, just quiet respect. When they reached the names from my old station, I felt that tightness in my throat return. 5 names, 5 men who never made it out. The smoke crept into my vision. This time, I didn't fight it. I let the memory come. Let the grief wash through me. Let Cassie's steady presence hold me to the present. After the service, firefighters approached in 2s and 3s, not to console me, but to connect. A captain talked about his own panic attacks. A paramedic mentioned the comfort her dog gave her.
A rookie admitted he was on meds for anxiety after his first fatal scene. We were all damaged in some way. That's what made us a brotherhood. Later, as I was preparing to leave, Caroline Delaney, Nathan's soon-to-be ex-wife, approached me. She looked tired, but there was strength behind her exhaustion. She thanked me softly, said she'd suspected the financial lies for years but hadn't been able to prove it. Now the divorce was moving forward. She could rebuild without deception. Kyle's parents were there too, lingering by their car. His mother's eyes glistened with unshed tears as she apologized for her son. "We raised him better than this," she said, voice breaking. "I don't know where we went wrong." I had no answer for her. Some people choose their own destruction, even when they're given every chance. The parking lot emptied gradually as the sun climbed higher in the sky. I sat in my car for a long while, just breathing. They had tried one final manipulation, one last attempt to take what wasn't theirs. But truth has weight, and lies, no matter how carefully constructed, crumble beneath it. Cassie curled into the passenger seat, finally relaxing. Her tail wagged once when I started the engine. We'd faced our demons, and we'd won. Not with vengeance, with endurance. With the simple refusal to be broken by people who had never been tested themselves. The drive home was quiet. No music, no radio chatter. Just the hum of the engine and Cassie's slow, even breaths beside me. My hands were still. The smoke was gone. For the first time in months, I felt something like peace. That evening, I sat on my balcony watching the sun set in a blaze of orange and gold. Cassie lay beside me, stretched out in perfect ease. No limp, no pain. We'd both healed on our own timelines, in our own ways. The physical wounds were long since closed. The deeper ones would take longer. But I could live with that. I'd been fighting for 20 years. And I wasn't done yet. My phone buzzed. A message from Chief Ramirez.
The department had begun implementing new policies for memorial ceremonies, better vetting procedures for those claiming service. Nathan and Kyle's actions, as damaging as they had been, had sparked meaningful change. It wasn't their intention, of course, but sometimes even the worst people leave behind something useful. Sometimes good rises out of ashes. I deleted the files, all of them. The screenshots, the spreadsheets, the financial records, the lies preserved like evidence in a case I no longer needed to prosecute. They didn't matter anymore. Nathan and Kyle would carry the weight of their choices. They'd have to build new lives without the costumes they once wore so proudly. That was punishment enough. The nightmares would return tonight. They always did. I'd wake up gasping, lungs full of phantom smoke, the screams of children echoing from a fire long since extinguished. But Cassie would be there, as she always was, grounding me, reminding me that I'd survived, that I'd saved who I could, that being broken didn't mean being worthless. I thought about the kindergartners I'd carried out of that blaze, 47 lives, grown now, adults with careers, families, their own struggles and victories. They probably never thought about the scarred firefighter who ran into hell for them. And that was how it should be. Heroes don't need recognition. They just need to know they did the job. Tomorrow would bring its own battles. The PTSD wouldn't vanish. The pills would still line the bathroom cabinet. The tremors would return, just like they always did. But I'd face it with the quiet dignity those men had tried to take from me. I'd wear my dress blues to the next ceremony. I'd stand among my brothers again, not in shame, but in strength. Cassie stirred beside me, her head resting lightly in my lap. I stroked her fur, feeling her breath rise and fall, steady, calm. We'd protected each other through it all. Now it was time to heal, to move forward, to find purpose beyond the pain. The stars began to prick the night sky. Somewhere out there, Nathan was likely trying to keep his failing training business afloat. Kyle was probably staring at blank job applications, realizing just how hollow life becomes when there's no uniform to hide behind. They'd find their path, or they wouldn't. It was no longer my burden. I stood. Cassie rose beside me, her movement fluid, strong. No limp,
no trace of the injury they gave her. We moved toward the apartment, 2 survivors who had refused to be victims. Whatever tomorrow brought, we'd meet it head-on. Tonight we rested knowing we had faced our tormentors and walked away with our integrity untouched. The medals on my uniform caught the last rays of daylight as I hung it carefully in the closet. It wasn't about the metal, not really. It was about what it represented. The willingness to run into fire for people you'll never see again. Nathan and Kyle had craved the glory, but not the sacrifice. And that's the thing about valor. It can't be faked. I prepared Cassie's dinner, smiling as she devoured it with the joy only a dog can muster. She had been kicked, threatened, used to hurt me, and still she trusted. Still she loved. Still she served. There was a lesson in that, one I was still learning. My therapist would want to know everything, about the confrontation, about the resolution. She'd talk about closure, about processing, about growth. And maybe, someday soon, I'd be ready to tell her. But tonight I just wanted to sit in the quiet, Cassie at my feet, and appreciate the most underrated victory of all: survival. Refusing to be broken by those who never knew what it meant to truly serve. The future was still uncertain, but it didn't feel dark anymore. I'd keep attending the memorials, keep honoring the names, keep carrying the weight. But now I'd do it on my terms, surrounded by those who knew what sacrifice looked like. Ironically, it was Nathan and Kyle who gave me that clarity. Through their cruelty, they reminded me of who I really was. Not just the trauma, not just the scars. A firefighter, a survivor, a man who saved 47 children and lost 5 brothers and kept going anyway. That was enough. More than enough. It was everything.